Welcome back to SharePoint Charts Complete Training. In this session, we're going to be looking at scatter plots and bubble charts. In fact, the bubble chart is really the same as a scatter plot, with the difference being that the points which are plotted can change in size, and those are then bubbles, hence the name bubble chart. These are special kinds of charts that work with particular data sets, and these are a bit more advanced. If you've never made this kind of chart before, these examples that we're going to do in the training will help you understand the data set that we're working with a little bit better. You might also do a quick search on the web just to look for examples of bubble charts and scatter plot if this is new territory for you. So let's go ahead and begin. Here I am in my SharePoint Charts Complete Training, and we're in the scatter plot and bubble chart section. And you see an example image of a scatter plot that's already been built. These charts work from multiple rows of data. We're going to go ahead and build these from two Excel workbooks, which you will download. So that's where you want to begin. I already downloaded mine to my local computer, so we'll just pick up right there. So that's the first thing I want to do is get those loaded. So we've got two workbooks. Those are user licenses. That's the first one I'm going to load. So I need to go to my SharePoint site, and I'm going to open my Excel workbook. And there it is. Just click Enable Editing. And then at that point, you want to click on the Table Design tab, and then click on Export Table to SharePoint List. And then I need to paste in the site. For me, it is this part of the URL. That's what Excel wants. I just paste it in. And then I like to name my list to match up with the workbook that it's coming from. So I'll just call this user licenses, and then next, and finish. Notice the title column doesn't have anything in it. That's fine. We don't need that column for the chart that we're doing, so that's correct. Okay, so that one's loaded. And I have one more list I need to create. This is for category sales. All right, so I'm going to open that up, click Enable Editing. Same drill as before, click on Table Design, Export to SharePoint List. You should be able to just paste that site name in again, and I'll call this Category Sales. And next, and finish. It's done. And we're done with the workbooks. You don't have to do anything more with those at all. And at this point, I want to go to my site contents, and I'm going to find those lists that were just created. So one of them was category sales. Okay, and then I need to make some changes. So I'm going to go to the gear icon, go to list settings. I want to turn off that quick property editing. Scroll to the bottom, click No next to quick property editing, and you can select New Experience for the list. Okay. And then I will want to link to this. So I'm going to just go ahead and link to that right now from my home page. So that's the URL to this list. I'm going to go to my home page, and category sales corresponds to the bubble chart that I'm going to make. So do add link, and I'm going to say this is for my bubble chart. And we'll see if we find something that looks sort of like what we're getting ready to do. I suspected this would be the case. There's not going to be a bubble chart icon here. That looks like there's the scatter chart, so that's good. Let's try this. Well, since it's a bubble, I'll just do a circle for now. Okay, there's the bubble chart. Close that. Click on my icon. I'm just going to drag this down to the end. Republish. So that'll jump me to my bubble chart list, which is category sales. And then the other one was user licenses. Okay, so I just need to find that in here. There it is. It's our newly created list. I'm going to do the same steps that I did for the other list. I need to go to the list settings and go to the advanced settings, scroll to the bottom, turn off quick property editing so it's not in that grid mode, and then select new experience. Then I can return back to that list view screen, and I'm just going to grab that link because I like to have handy links to my charts for my homepage. So I'll do add a link and paste, and that one's for my scatter plot. We do have an icon handy for that. We saw it when we searched for the other one, so I'll just type chart, and then in here that's a scatter plot type icon. Close that, and then I'll just move that down to the end and republish. So we're just kind of getting everything ready to go. So we are going to start with the scatter plot first. And as I like to do with the other charts, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and create another view for this. So I'm going to just do save view as scatter chart, like so. And we don't use the title field on this. There is one thing I want to check. Because we're not using the title field, I want to make sure that's not required. And I'm going to check and see about that. It looks like it is set to be not required, so that part's fine. I'm going to modify the view because I don't really need to see these first two columns. So a quick way to do that, you can click on Add Column, Show or Hide Columns. I'm going to uncheck Type and Title. You don't have to do this to make the chart work, but since we don't really need to see that data, it's best to just turn that off. I'll do that for the All Items view as well. So Show or Hide Columns, and I just uncheck those first two. Now we've got more focused in on what it is that we're going to be using. So before we apply a template, let's just understand what we have. So these are our data points. We've got two numeric values that are going to be used to plot the data. So we're going to have licenses, which is going to be our x-axis, and then cost, which will be the y-axis. Then there's one other field, which is going to tell it what color of dot, and that's going to correspond to what we're doing with our data. So in our user licenses, the situation we're trying to do, we're going to have standard licenses and pro licenses. So this will make more sense to you in a moment. So let's go ahead and go over to our template. So we're going to do scatter plot first, and I will just click on scatter plot template. You should do the same, and then it's going to give us a quick preview that helps us understand what we're making. And this is just some dummy data to help us understand what we're working with. And it needs to have 3 fields. So we need the X dimension, that's the left to right dimension first, then the Y, which is your vertical, and then the color field. So we need the names of those fields. So we are going to do licenses as the X dimension, and cost as the Y dimension. So we just put in licenses, cost, and then the other column is just called color. We're not going to use the background gradient for training. There's information on the site if you want to load those in, but for our purposes, we're going to turn that off. We'll set that to none. And then the other thing we want to do is control our X and Y axis range. We know that the range for the licenses, the licenses can be the x-axis. So that's going to be ranging from 0. And then if you look at our data set, we want to kind of have an idea of what the range is. And if you look through that data, you'll notice the high value is 200, and then the low is around 10. So we need to make sure that we set it up for that. So the max here, instead of it being 2,000, which is the default, we want that to be more like 250. Okay, and then for the y-axis, that has costs, and those range in values, with the high end going up around 600 and something is one of the values I see. So let's say that the top for that one is going to be 800. Okay, so that's very important. If we don't make those adjustments, everything's going to be kind of out of scale for what we want to see. Then we need to control the label. So we do need to enter that information. So on the y-axis, that was cost. On the x-axis is the licenses. We need to also put information into the key. So we'll say our standard licenses are the blue ones from Excel, if you look at your data. And then the Pro licenses, we're going to do those red. So the way this works is you have a comma delimited set of fields. So you could actually have more than two. That's just what we're doing in our training. And then there's a delimiter, a pipe character. So you have the name of what you want in that key at the top, and then the corresponding colors. So that's how that all works. All right, so we put in a lot of information. Let's go ahead and copy our template and see how close we've gotten so far. So I just do Format Current View, Advanced Mode, and then Select All, Paste, and Save. Pretty good for a starting point. We're very close already to what we want to see. So it plotted all those points. You notice the dots are all the same size, and that's what we want. And then we've got a key at the top, and that was configured where we typed in Standard and Pro, so the user would have an idea what these different colors correspond to. So the concept here is there's a number of licenses being bought by a customer, and then there's an amount in dollars in terms of how much that sale was worth. And so the standard licenses, the total amount on those, of course, is lower than these Pro licenses. Those cost more money. So it helps you see a trend in your data in terms of what kind of orders are happening, that type of thing. Now we can make some other tweaks to this, so I'm going to go ahead and make those adjustments right now, just to make things look a little bit more interesting. One thing we can do is we can make that point size a lot larger. We might find that more interesting to look at. That's perhaps too big. Let's try 30, and we'll copy that over and see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks interesting, but now we kind of have these overlapping blobs. Well, one thing we're able to do with the chart template is use a transparency setting. It's actually called opacity in the setting, and that makes them semi-transparent. So just for illustration, let's go ahead and set that to 40, and you're going to see what the effect is. Basically, it makes this work a lot better when you have overlapping points. So now you can see where the overlap is, and this makes a little bit more sense in terms of looking at that. It's a different kind of effect. It helps you see where there's a concentration in points and values. So it's just another option that's available to you. For the most part, that really covers everything that you want. I probably would like to make that fill the page more. So as with the other charts, I can adjust the overall canvas height, and that's probably going to look a lot better if I do that. So I set that to 500, and I'll just do copy, and I just go like that. And now it kind of fills our page more, so that tends to look a little bit better. I suppose I could make it a bit wider too, just to fill up from that perspective. So just the same way I did the canvas height, I can adjust my column width, make that 120, and that'll push the overall chart width wider, and that has something more like what I want, where it's going to really fill up the page. And that's pretty much it. We've done a really interesting, sophisticated chart here, the scatter plot, and you can see the potential for this. So this is going to work great with a type of chart where you need to plot, you have lots of points of data with where you can have those two dimensions. So you have, in this case, it was licenses and a total cost in dollars, but it could be all kinds of different dimensions. So be sure to search the web, look for other examples, and you'll start to get more ideas, and then you might be able to see opportunities to do this type of chart to plot data for things going on in your organization. Now, let's go ahead and go on to the bubble chart. So I'll go back to my home page, and I'm going to click on my bubble chart link. And let's go ahead and, now in this case we do want the title. I don't need to see the first column though, so I'll just go ahead and hide that. The type, that's gone, that's good. And then let's go ahead and do save view as, and let's call this bubble chart. Okay, so this data set generally is a little bit simpler. We only have 4 rows of data, but there's an additional dimension to the data. So we have sales, orders, and another dimension called profit, and that's where the size of the bubble is going to come from. And like the other one, we have color setting as well. So let's go ahead and close the scatter plot template, and we'll open up the bubble chart template. So just like the other one, it's going to give us a preview. So this is what we're shooting for. So as you saw in the last one, we were changing the size of those points. In this case, those point sizes are connected with our data, and they're bubbles that are going to be smaller or bigger according to the value being tracked. So that's what's going on here. So with it, I'll go ahead and open up my Excel so we can look at what this corresponded to. So we got our sales and orders and profit. Okay, so let's go ahead and put some of our information in. So I'm going to come down here, and our orders is going to be our X, that's going left to right. And then sales is going to go vertically. Our color field, we have that just set name color, and then the area, the size of the bubble, that's going to be this other additional metric we have called profit. Like the other one, I'm going to turn off the background gradient for this example, and I am going to check some of my other settings. I don't want it to be called my bubble chart, so let's go ahead and change that. So we'll call this category sales. Put profit, because that's the bubble size. Let's go ahead and change the canvas height. I remember we wanted to change that. The Y is going to be sales, that's the vertical, and then we had orders going left to right. Alright, so we've got a lot of things already configured. Now we do want to check our ranges. That was really key. So it looks like for the sales, which is the vertical, if you look at our data, you'll see that it ranges all the way up to around 20,000. So let's go ahead and give it some room. So I'm going to make this be 24,000. And then the x-axis was for orders. That's a much smaller number set. So you can see when you're building this kind of chart, it is very important that you prepare those data ranges accordingly. Otherwise, when you first load your chart, it's going to be kind of blown out of proportion. It's not going to work the way that you're expecting it to. Okay, so now that I've made those adjustments, I should be ready to apply my initial template. So I went to the view selector, format current view, then advanced mode, select all and paste. Okay, so as you can see, that looks very strange. So we have to see what's going on. In general, this is the problem. So there's a setting which controls the size of our bubbles, and unfortunately that is way out of whack. But that's going to be really easy to fix. I'm going to show you where that's set. So if I go into my data, we need to look at the max area value. That corresponds to profits. Okay, so what I need to do is look at that in my data, and if you look at your Excel, you want to be aware of what that range is as well. So that ranges up to around 4,200. So I want this value, which is controlling that bubble size, to match up with that. So I made that adjustment, and we can apply that. Hopefully we'll have a fix. There we go. Now we've got a chart that doesn't look so crazy. So let's take a second and think about what's going on here. So on the x-axis, it tells us this is orders. This is the total number of orders coming from that column of data. On the y-axis, we have sales. So that's dollar amounts. And that's plotting the location of these bubbles. We've got a key at the top. And I just realized another problem. It has dummy data in there. We don't want to say cherries, oranges, limes, and grapes. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix that right now. If you look in your Excel data, you'll see, in fact, that, let's see, hardware, check my data. Okay, so it was services. You put a pipe character, and then the color, and then a comma, electronics, pipe character, and the color, furniture, pipe character, and lime green, and then the last one was hardware, pipe character, and purple. Okay, let's try that. So there's multiple steps setting up this kind of chart. A lot of gotchas, a lot of things to watch out for to get everything right. Okay, now we're making some sense. When I look at the key, it tells me, okay, red is services. So I can look at this bubble and be like, oh, okay, this one had a little bit more than 154 orders, over 18,000 sales, and our profits were 4,200. So it's 3 different dimensions of data being shown to you in the chart all at one time. Like the other one, you can adjust the opacity. That might make sense if these bubbles were overlapping. It just depends on the data set that you're working with. Just kind of a goofy alternative, you can actually make them squares if you want to. So you could do squares in the grid. It's just an alternative look in case that was something that interests you, and depending on the amount of items that you had. Let me go ahead and turn that back off. I tend to like the bubbles a little bit better myself. That's pretty much it. Generally, these other settings follow the same rules and functionality as the other templates that we work with. So just be sure to do things step by step, and you should be able to avoid getting tripped up. All right. So I hope you found that interesting. This is just expanding your abilities in terms of all the different kinds of charts that you can build. There's a lot of possibilities, and as we go further into this training, we're going to be looking at more interesting, unique charts that kind of explore some boundaries, get you out of the box and thinking beyond what are the typical go-tos, which are the bar charts, line charts, pie charts, things like that. It's getting you outside of that and visualizing data in more creative and unique ways, which is going to be more attention getting for your users. So this is getting more into advanced charting concepts. So I hope you found that interesting, and if you have any questions, just put those below the video, and I'll try to help out, and good luck.